Hey everyone, Paul and Gretchen here. Great to be with you guys. I hope you're safe and doing well. We find ourselves still at home and realizing this week that we're in this for the long haul.
Yes.
You know, at times you think, oh, this is going to blow over. It's going to be quick. It'll be fast. Everything will get back to normal. Kids will go back to school. We'll go back to work. And then we realize, oh man, this is a lot longer than what we thought it was going to be. And it's going to require a lot more out of us than we thought that it was going to require.
Exactly. And I think not everybody is in the same situation we're in when we're both home. Some people, it's very different as far as some people are leaving the home and working still, and there's just a lot. But I think if we're all honest, we could probably all relate to the reality that in this season, in this time, there's a lot that's rising to the surface. A lot in me that is becoming very obvious, that before this I could easily distract myself from looking at. And you know, things that have come up with the kids and the ways that I react to them. You know, we have a lot of teenagers in our home, and so you know, it's hard for them. This is difficult for them, but instead of like trying to meet them where they are and seek understanding, I've been very impatient and, you know, shamed them in a sense and called them selfish and these kinds of things. So this ugliness in me and this weakness, and not just in that way, but in a lot of ways, this impatience, this frustration, this mix of feelings of like grief even, of what used to be, the trying to embrace this new normal, is just bringing up a lot, I think, in both of us and all of our kids, and in most people that I talk to.
Yeah, I think for me too, like if you were to ask all of our kids, our whole family, everyone is grieving something. It's bringing up something in them. And it's also bringing up sort of all of our weaknesses in a lot of ways, like where we fall short. It's revealing a lot in me as a husband, as a dad, ways I'm impatient, ways that I don't trust, ways that I don't like the downtime, ways of feeling maybe a little insecure, or financially, you know, how are things going to work out as a provider, you know, and then the tension, you know, builds with our kids and what they're dealing with each individually in their own little worlds and the way they see the situation, the way they see things. And, you know, it's always interesting to me. I think one of the scriptures that I always find great consolation in that helps me is when St. Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians, he says, but when I am weak, I am made strong. And it's sort of this paradoxical, you know, comment and scripture verse that makes no sense when you read it, but when you really pray with it and understand it, you begin to find a lot of consolation in there, because the reality is we're all weak. Mm-hmm. None of us are perfect. And yet it's in our weakness that we find God's grace to sustain us. And one of the conversations we've been having is, okay, we're in this for the long haul, and we're in life for the long haul, right? How is God going to sustain us during this time? Like not just maintain, but sustain us. Be the one to give us the grace and the strength that we need during this time. So when we do sort of quote unquote get back to normal, we're better off, we're better people, mm-hmm. We've become better, we've grown, and we've changed for the better.
I think for me, I feel like God has just brought me to the end of myself in a lot of ways. I just feel like I have very little to give on my own. I have this great awareness of like, I really can't do this. Like everything, every comfort, everything I've gone to just deal with life sometimes has been stripped away. Yeah, there are still ways that I can distract myself. But this great awareness is creating in me a great hunger and a great desire to really go to the Lord in new and deeper ways. And to allow Him to let these things rise in me so that He can show me the ways that I've created false idols in my life and put other things and people before Him in a lot of ways. And so I think what we want to talk about next is just how to let Him sustain us in this time. And I think the first thing is just awareness and just saying, Lord, I really can't do this. I really do need you. I really need you to help me to love these people, to help me to heal in the ways that I see so clearly that I'm still broken or wounded. I need you to come to my rescue and to really be my everything, not just to be a part of my life, but just to be my life. I need you to just breathe on me, to love me, so that I can be free, so that I can love my husband well, my children well, in this really difficult and stressful time.
Yeah, when we recognize our need for God and He's the one that sustains us, it's not sort of this self-loathing or condemnation. It's just the reality of maybe I've relied on other things to sustain me, my identity in my work, my identity with my time, my, getting my security from certain things or situations. And we're realizing when all those things are kind of stripped away, or a lot of them are, what's sustaining us? I can't sustain myself. I don't have enough grace to pour into myself to sustain myself. So recognizing our need is simply allowing God more space in our life and our heart to pour in His grace to sustain us. Really the reality is it's in our weakness that's the meeting place for Jesus. So to deny our weakness is almost to deny the very meeting place to have a conversation and meet with Jesus, right?
Yeah. And I think too, to deny our pain and to compare to other people's pain, or to try to dismiss it as not holy, like I should just be trusting, it's also just not allowing God to sustain us, not trusting that He already fully knows us. He already knows our thoughts, our fears, our anxieties, because He knows us through and through. And so I think to be okay with acknowledging our weaknesses, and to be okay with acknowledging our pain and saying, Lord, I am scared. I am having trouble trusting you. To be real with Him so that He can sustain us where we are, not where we think we should be. Just to be authentic and vulnerable with God and not try to suppress it, but to count your losses in a sense. To say, man, I'm really bummed that this got canceled and that this isn't happening anymore, or that, our kids to feel free to say, I really want to be at school in a certain way. I really miss my friends, and to not, expect them to move to gratitude right off the spot. I think the Lord wants the same thing from us, just to be honest with where we are, so that He can sustain us where we are and meet us where we are, I think is important.
Yeah, when we recognize our need for Jesus, it allows us, really our second point is to just to fix our eyes on Him, to place our eyes on Jesus, the one who gives us the grace, the mercy, the strength that we need in our lives to be sustained, right? I think there's been days where I just want to force myself to be distracted, but I know I need to just draw my eyes back to Christ, And there's been so many amazing gospel readings during Lent, and I'm always awestruck, by the reading in John of the woman who's caught in adultery, and her and Jesus just become really face to face, eye to eye, on her level when He bends down, and it's in that moment where her eyes are fixed on Jesus and her life's never the same. And that was in the midst of her sin. That was in the midst of, a really bad time in her life. Tradition tells us that she becomes, she's Mary Magdalene, who ends up being a great follower of Jesus, who kept her eyes on Jesus in and after her greatest time of sin.
Absolutely. And I think too, we can put our eyes on so many things right now. We can put our eyes on our Facebook feed or on the news or reading articles, and not that that's bad in and of itself, but I think what we're both coming to understand is that we have to limit our exposure and limit our exposure to fixing our eyes on those sorts of things, and to really go back into the gaze of the Lord when we start to doubt or we start to fear, fall into those same traps, that we could, just look to Him. I remember this one quote from this book, a shepherd looks at Psalm 23 and it says, when my eyes are on the shepherd, they are on no one else. Therein lies my peace. And so this peace that we're really longing for can only be found in Jesus, because it's not going to be found in any answers and any quick fixes and anything of the world. Our peace, even though the storm might still be raging around us and be coming in closer to affect the people we know, we love the most, as far as this virus is concerned, that in this storm that we can not look at the waves so much, that we can refocus on him, even when we might also be tempted not to look and fix our eyes on him because of our own shame. That we can trust that God is who he says he is, and that he loves us the way that he says he loves us, completely, fully, no matter what we've done. And he always invites us back into this gaze that is completely other, that is not like any other gaze we know. Even the most loving person in our lives is only a pale glimpse of the way that God looks at us with his eyes of love. And so to not be afraid of that gaze, to not be afraid to fix our eyes there, because it's the place that we are known fully and loved fully.
Yeah, and this doesn't look perfect. I mean, we're not perfect at this. This is not trying to be perfect and have a perfect picture. Jesus enters into our mess, and really we want to invite you guys, thirdly, to just allow Jesus to be a part of your world. Like, invite him into your messy world, because we don't have it all together. We're just like, okay, Lord, like, you got to enter into the chaos of our world and our marriage and the imperfections of who we are as a husband and a wife, as a mom and a dad, with our 5 kids. It's interesting. Jesus doesn't stand outside and lets us, get it all together. He enters in, during the storm with the disciples. He's in the boat, in the storm, in the chaos, in their fear and in their worry. And when we invite Jesus in our world, that's the place where he wants to be.
Right. And so I think just taking that time, asking for the grace to respond to his invitation. He's tirelessly pursuing us through the encounter known as prayer. That's what the Catechism tells us. Like, God is always initiating this desire, this relationship with us, to converse with him, to meet with him. And so, for us just to respond to that grace and to say, Lord, I'm going to meet with you every day. I'm going to strive to meet with you. Give me the grace to do that. And make a plan, set aside, just even if you're not already doing that, maybe you start small, like 5 minutes a day, that you're just going to wake up before the house is up and, just be still before the Lord. Maybe that's it. You just show up and you just say, Lord, I'm just going to sit here, just pour into me. I don't even know what to say. Or maybe you're going to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes. Maybe you'll read the gospel for the day and you'll reflect on what's standing out to you. How is God wanting to speak to you? Maybe you'll utter some prayers to him and try to listen to what his Holy Spirit might want to speak to you through that scripture. It can look a lot of different ways, but I think our encouragement for everyone listening and for ourselves is to keep on keeping on and try to make this appointment with God a priority so that he can calm the storm in our hearts. Really, there's not an end to when the storm outside of our own hearts is going to be calmed, but he wants to bring peace to our hearts. And so can we set aside a time individually each day, and when we don't get to it, can we have mercy on ourselves and just try again the next day, to do it again, to try to meet with him and to not be afraid of that vulnerability with him, to not be afraid to let him speak into the things that we are struggling with, and just to lay it all before him. So these things are rising up in me, and can I lay them all before him and talk to him about them and ask him to talk to me about it, so that when I'm doing this, y'all, when I am like in a habit of seeking the Lord and just carving out silent time to sit with him and in his word, we can't feast on the Eucharist right now, but we can feast on his word right now. Then what happens is I'm receiving his mercy, because I'm just falling short so often, amongst other things in that time. But I'm aware of my imperfections, and I'm asking for his mercy, and then I'm able to more freely extend it. As I'm receiving his love and his mercy for me, I'm more freely able to extend it to this family that God has given me, and that I have so much time with right now. So just one small fruit of how God can use that time. Not that it'll be perfect throughout the day, but that it could be better, and that I could say I'm sorry more easily to my kids or my husband when I mess it up, because I have received God's mercy and those appointments with Him.
Yeah, so we want to encourage you to just invite Jesus into your world personally, invite Him into your marriage, take some time as a couple, even in the chaos, to, pray together, just have a home date together. Take some time as a family to pray, to watch Mass online, to do whatever you can to kind of nurture your family, and invite Jesus in. It's interesting, during this season we read this passage from the Old Testament of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who believed in God and were under the realm of a pagan king, Nebuchadnezzar. And he throws them in a fire to kill them, 3 of them. It says that, they worshiped God instead. They didn't deny God. They just, right there, they didn't pray to get out. We're going to worship God in the fire, in the tension, in the chaos, in the heat, in the moment. And lo and behold, God shows up. The presence of God shows up. King Nebuchadnezzar turns up the fire. And look, you guys, right now, the fire's turned up. It's hot. It's tense. We don't know the end, and we don't know a lot of things. But God showed up in the fire next to them and saved them. And so that's the God that we know and love. And in the midst of our craziness, in the midst of our weakness, in the midst of our chaos, in the midst of the tension, in the midst of the fire, God shows up and wants to be a part of your life and your family. So we want to encourage you. During this time, we're with you, we're praying for you, and join us in this chaos, and allow God to sustain you there in this time. So thank you guys, and God bless.